Are you a motorcycle guy?
Yeah, I've designed and built quite a few. Designed more for other customers. Yeah, all the Untitled motorcycle stuff from the London branch. I've done all that. So like, you know, they are Death to Petrol, like the white and black electric thing that they released.
I believe so.
Yeah, I designed that.
Oh, really?
I designed a wild, like, flat pack.
I'd love to see. Yeah, because I don't even know. I know absolutely nothing of you except that minute-long conversation we had with David over the phone.
Yeah, so basically we met in university and we did product design, but Jack did more like mechanical design. I did more like aesthetic. And then I set up my business making children's furniture, and I did that for quite a while. Realised it was really hard to run your business and show your own story, whilst Jack was down south working in film at the time. And after a few years of working for myself, I thought there's got to be a better way to like share maker stories. And so we came up with a printed publication. I'll show you it later. It's biannual, shares makers from all across the world in it. This is our 6th edition, and we've shared 350 makers from across the world so far.
Oh, wow.
Within it. So we started podcasting about 6 months ago as like an addition, like a digital like aspect of We Are Makers. And yeah, we decided like 6 weeks before we came here that we were like, let's just do America.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So I built that as the first prototype.
Oh, wow, yeah. Yes.
Which was all flat pack.
Yes, I remember that.
And then that's as it sits in the workshop at the moment.
Yeah.
Unfinished for maybe 5 years. So
I remember that bike.
Yeah?
Yeah, I've seen it. Yeah, shit like that, I'm always like, man, this is wild.
Yeah, it was wild.
Yeah, it's like just different.
Wild. I think it put a few people's nose out of joint on the internet, but hey, that's part and parcel with the internet, isn't it?
Yeah, that's when you're actually doing something different, you know? Yeah. I talked about this too as, I think, what was it? The Fast Life podcast. It's like an American motorcycle podcast.
Right, okay.
It's a lot of Harley-centric guys and stuff. And I brought that up too. I was like, you know, everybody so easily gives himself credit for like doing something different. Yeah. You know, well, I did my frame this color. No one else has done that. Blah, blah, blah. Whatever weird combination. Because it's really just combinations. But if you think about it, it's weird. We're still motor and two wheel. It's basically the same thing that we're doing over.
You can't go too far off piste.
Yeah, for 100 years, you know, and then somebody does something actually really different, like what you did, and everyone just gives them shit. So like everybody wants to say how creative they are, how different they are, how their stuff is different than everybody else's. But then as soon as somebody comes along and actually does something really different, people hate it, you know? Like when Yamaha...
People lose their shit.
Yeah. Was it Yamaha that had that motorcycle that had the two front wheels really close together?
Yep.
I mean, people lost their shit on that bike, but it was like this... I mean, yeah, it's ugly as hell, but it's cool. It's, you know...
It's different. It makes you think differently.
Yeah, I mean, it was just a technological advancement. Yeah. I mean, majorly, it was like they had this crazy concept, they figured it out, and it worked, and evidently it works really well in, like, low traction situations. Like,
yeah, they're meant to be, like... You see quite a lot of them back home, especially down south, because back home, you don't need to get a motorbike license to drive one of them. You can drive it on a car license because it's 3-wheel. So you see loads of them. Loads of the Piaggio versions, the Yamaha versions. You just see loads of them scooting around in London because you don't need to go and get an extra license. You can just drive it on your car license.
But we're not talking about...
Yeah, no,
there's
the
the
two
ones,
there's
like that?
the big Scorpions, but the two little side-by-side wheels.
That too.
Yeah, they can still drive them on a car license back home.
Because I've never even seen one over here.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I've never seen one. I've just seen them on the internet.
See loads of them.
Really? And then you got all that wet weather. So that's probably a big benefit of it too.
And,
right?
like, London is particularly slow to drive around. So if you're driving around London real slow, that's laborious on a motorbike.
Yeah.
Stop, start, stop, start. Because they, like, level out. So when you stop at lights, you don't need to put your feet down. They just sit there.
Yeah.
They're wild. So, like, for that situation, they're actually perfect. They're really good.
That's cool.
So, yeah, there's loads of stuff. And then I've seen you done the Zero FXS, you know, the Scrambler.
Yeah.
So Adam, I'd done a zero frame for him as well, and that was one of the pictures he sent me. He's like, this is wicked. Like we've done a very geometrical version, but used that as a sort of inspiration point.
Oh, that's
so
awesome.
That's cool.
That makes me feel great.
Yeah. Good. So let's get cracking.
Yeah.
So this is quite a fun podcast for us because we didn't even know you existed until like 2 days ago.
Yeah.
And then lucky be Dave Bond was like, you guys need to speak to him when you're in Austin. And then sure enough, you had a morning free because you're working like nights now getting ready for the handbuilt show, aren't you?
Yeah, they got me on the evening shift.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Unsupervised. Too.
yeah.
Love it.
So we're with Colt Wrangler, professional motorbike builder, buck and horse rodeo guy. Like that's all just a wild world that we've just been introduced to, and I do want to talk about that. But I suppose the first question is, who is Colt Wrangler?
Oh, geez, I'm trying to figure that out. I spent the last 30 years trying to figure that out.
Yeah.
Just I had just an interesting upbringing. Both my parents rodeoed professionally. They came from totally different backgrounds. My dad was just like a foster kid from the inner city, and my mom was like, grew up on a farm in the Ozarks. So totally two different worlds. And then they both fell in love with bull riding. So my mom was actually a bull rider too. A lot of these photos on the wall.
Yeah, we had Luke as well. So.
And then my father as well. And so they were just kind of poor as hell, and they just hit the road together. When they started, they were just like hitchhiking going to rodeos because they kind of didn't have anything to lose,
Yeah.
And they ended up kind of building, they did the bull riding and stuff professionally, but they ended up building a career within the rodeo world.
Right.
And so I grew up in that, to where we were going to rodeos, every weekend, all summer long, and that kind of stuff. And also they got into the entertainment side of it as well. My dad did all like the audio productions for rodeos and stuff like that.
Oh, okay.
Cool.
So I grew up, around rodeo, around a lot of the rough stock people, which is the bucking horses, the bulls, all that stuff. That's the rough stock. And so I grew up with...
Is that what you kind of categorise the bucking bulls, the bucking horses? That's the rough stock.
Rough stock,
side, right? Okay.
Yeah, everything that's bucks and is wild, that's supposed to buck. That's rough stock. So your bulls and your horses. So and then with my dad doing the audio side, and my mom was always like a singer songwriter and stuff,
Okay.
and then it turned into her singing live at these events, her recording like music. We would sell her albums and stuff at the rodeos. My dad would get paid by the committees to like do all the audio for it. So I had that duality of like the musical, technical audio side of things, and then also just the rough and dirty like cowboy stuff.
Yeah.
So me growing up, I started playing drums to just play with my mom basically at a young age, like probably like 10. I probably started playing drums around the age of 10. And, by the time I was like 12, 13, I was like playing live with her.
That's so cool.
So I kind of went, I rodeoed and did all that through high school. I bought my first motorcycle when I was like 17. Had no idea what I was doing. What can I get for less than $4,000? And I bought a Yamaha R6, which is like terrible idea for a young guy.
Yeah, that's the worst idea.
Worst. I didn't even have a helmet. Like I bought the bike and had no helmet,
A full super sports bike, no helmet.
Yeah.
First bike, that's nuts.
Yeah. Way out in the country where it's just deer and, twisty roads and gravel roads and everything. So trial by error, I figured that out and thankfully didn't kill myself. So through high school, it was like I was riding bulls. I was riding broncs. I was, had my motorcycle, and I was playing music, and I was like working at a tire and lube shop because I always kind of had interest in cars and bikes and different stuff like that. So I was like, well, whatever I can do to just start wrenching,
right.
Even just changing the tire. So I was kind of growing all those things at once. I didn't really think about it that much. But looking back, it's like, I was doing all those interests as soon as I could.
Yeah.
And there's always one that kind of takes precedent over the other. And, of course, I always had to work because I needed to make money. So I just kept working in tire and lube. And then I started pursuing music. I ended up moving to San Antonio. It was the first city I ever lived in. and I started playing in like a heavy, like prog rock band, basically.
Right.
And so I got to do all that. So I grew my hair out. That's where the dreadlocks came from. I had dreadlocks for a long time.
Yeah.
And that was because I was working on cars during the day and stuff, and my hair kept getting caught in the creepers, and it was always in my face. You know how it is.
Yeah.
It's like, ugh, it's so annoying. So having dreadlocks, I was able to like just tie it up, and it was out of my face all day, and my hair wasn't getting caught in the creeper. And I could still keep my long hair and headbang, you know, for those crazy shows we were playing. So, you know, I got to run through all of that and just really explore just different sides of, going back to your original question, like, who is Colt Wrangler? Well, it's just me exploring all that, you know.
That's awesome.
And hopping in a van with, you know, a bunch of bandmates with no money and traveling across the country and playing shows for $50, you know, just all that dumb shit. And
Doing $200 in fuel to get a $50.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, in $1,000 van, you know, hoping you make it back. So yeah, I got to do all that. You know, quit doing the rodeo stuff after high school. When I just couldn't really afford it. It was probably the last bull I had got on. I was probably like 20 years old, 19 or 20 years old. So I kind of quit after high school, gave it a year or two, then tried to get back on a little bit again, and then it was just like, this doesn't make any sense.
That's wild that the last bull you got on was 20. Like, what age were you the first bull you got on?
So the first full-size bull I got on, I think I was 13.
On a full-size bull?
Yeah, but they're not like, you know, there's calipers to it. It's like, he was big, he's just as big as any other bull, but, you know, there's
no calibers to it. You're 13-year-old and you got on a bull. There ain't no calibers to this. That's wild.
Yeah, but that's pretty normal. And then
It ain't.
and
Not
then,
to our standards, not.
and then bucking horses, they usually they want to start you a little bit later, like 15 or 16.
Right.
Yeah, some of the best guys in the world, they won't even let their kids get on until they're like 16.
Right.
It's just, which is interesting because being a bull rider, you kind of have a shorter lifespan in riding,
Right.
career span, I guess. It's rough. The injuries are rough. Bronc riding is dangerous as well, and you can really get yourself in a bind because it's harder to figure out. But once you figure it out, it's more sustainable. So there's some guys that are bronc riders there's not many of them, but there are guys out there that are 40 years old, still getting on broncs.
We seen a guy at the PBR, 48 years old, and he was like crawling to the cage.
Oh, I bet.
He just looked bust up.
Is it this dude? Was he like a Brazilian guy or something?
Yeah, Brazilian dude.
Yeah,
Like
and he
heavy
came out of
black facial
retirement
hair.
or something and
Something
got
like
on.
that. Yeah, and he was at the Stockyards just the other night.
Really?
Yeah, and he looked bust up.
Oh, I bet. I mean, I'm 31 now,
Yeah.
so I'm like an old guy. Like it's like I'm just doing it because I'm like, let me do it now. Because I don't want to be 50 and be like, man, you should have done a little bit more. When you were 30, you could have done it. Why didn't you do it? You know,
Yeah.
I don't want to look back like that. So that's why I started doing it again, and just scratch that itch a little bit, check off a couple more boxes, and be done. And so I'm like the old guy. So all my buddies I'm going with are you know, in their 20s, and some not even are drinking age yet. You know,
That's wild.
so yeah, you're typically your 20s, and that's about all you got. I mean, I say that, and then there's guys like that just defy the odds,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, but he was like visibly bust up.
Oh yeah, I bet he was.
Like he was like he got off the bull in what looked like the safest manner possible in that situation, and he was still like crawling out.
Oh man,
He just looked bust up.
that sounds terrible.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah. So, but no, typically that stuff starts at a young age. I mean, look at some of these pictures. I was like riding calves.
Yeah, we had to look at that.
You know, that's like competitive too. So that was, I'm in an association. You're paying fees. You're paying all that. You have like year in. You know, it's just like rodeo. It's just they start you really young, and it's one of those sports. It's like anything else now. It's like if you want to do something in BMX or skateboarding or anything like that, it's like, yeah, you better start skating when you're 5.
Yeah.
You know.
Pretty
Yeah,
much.
the bar for entry is so high for all these things now, isn't it?
Yeah.
So high.
It is.
Yeah.
And the sport has really, I mean, the PBR and all that stuff has progressed the sport so much because it's never, it's a recent thing that's standalone now, bull riding. It's always just been one event within a rodeo,
Right.
and now it's standalone, and that's made the competition so much more difficult. The bulls are so much more better. There's not necessarily that they're so much more better. There's so many more of the, like, what used to be a handful of the best bucking bulls back in the day is like whole pens of them now. It's like
Right.
the whole event is just top notch bulls all the way
Right.
through, instead of like some pretty good ones and then the few standouts. It's like they're all standouts now.
Yeah.
And you know, I'm seeing what you guys went to the stockyards.
Yeah.
So
Fort Worth Stockyard.
yeah, what a cool place, right?
It's wicked, eh? Do you know what I was amazed by it is you see places like that and immediately you think this is just going to be like touristified. It's going to be like super touristy. They're all going to be like knock-off cowboy hats, knock-off boots, just to get tourists in and get money in. And it wasn't. It was like Aria, and it was, you know, there was a shop doing proper Stetsons and they'd fit them there for you. And I was like, this is the real deal. It felt authentic, you know?
It is, and that's what's cool about it, because they really did a good line of, hey, this is a tourist place, this is a lot of tourism, but also protecting like the real culture, or having the real culture there. So a lot of these Western brands are based there.
Yeah.
You know, you're gonna walk down there. You know, there's a lot of cowboys that are there. I mean, you're there in the stockyards. You know, big tourist hub, people walking around, this, that, and the other, and then there's a line of like trucks and horse trailers coming in for the rodeo, and dudes on horses.
We see exactly
and
that.
I mean, like real cowboys, like real hands and stuff back there. Every weekend they're there.
Yeah.
You know, working
Yeah.
the
It's
rodeos or
incredible to
whatever.
That's it.
And they're some of the handiest guys you'd ever meet. You know, but they're in the inner city.
Yeah.
And you get to see them, and that's just super
and it
rare.
was like super authentic as well. You know, the hotel that we walked past, you know, the big hotel. There's like
Drover?
2 hotels. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
it. And it was like big trucks with horse boxes on the back dropping people off. It wasn't just like, you know, flash cars coming for the weekend. It was all cowboys staying there. It was all the real deal.
Yeah.
It was wicked. Yeah, I really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
It was cool.
Yeah.
And that must have been a cool scene to grow up in.
Yeah, it really is. You know, I think it's easy to take it for granted when it's just your everyday. It's just normal. But I think me getting out in the world, me getting into that underground, like, you know, hard rock scene, and which was amazing, and I loved that contrast in my life. But that also helped open my eyes a little bit more to how I grew up and the people I grew up around, how great of a thing that is.
Yeah.
You know? And so as I'm getting a little bit older, I see myself going back more a little bit towards that. Just even the way I dress, the all kinds of stuff. Now, music-wise, like, yeah, I'll go to some weird-ass art show here in town. I'll go to some, you know, metal show where they're screaming and rolling around on the floor, and I'll listen to any kind of music. I listen to all kinds of weird shit. But my normal life, it's like, you know, I want to drive the old truck. I want to wear just a regular pearl snap and some boots. You know, it's like I'm just enjoying that. I'm treasuring that a little bit more. And as I see those people that I grew up around, these guys that taught me a lot of things, and that taught me horsemanship, and that taught me all these rodeo, and taught me how to weld the first time, or whatever it is, I'm starting to cherish those memories more, and like kind of look at who those people were more, and model myself more after that. So I think it's just, I don't know. I was actually thinking about that this morning, of how we want to judge people. It's easy to judge people when you see them change.
Yeah.
You know, when you see them dress a little bit differently, or, you know, because I guess it could be a cue of being inauthentic.
Yep.
Or there's no real base, so they're just kind of floating around everywhere. But also, there are those people to where we should be encouraged to just try different things out.
Yeah.
Because you never know what you're going to end up like really landing on, and really find a love for. You know, like the motorcycle stuff, the fabrication stuff. I did not grow up around that. You know, all the welders were just building fence and metal buildings. That's it.
Yeah.
You know, I never saw a TIG welder probably till I was like 20, 30, 20, 21, 22 years old. Yeah. You know, it's like, what is this?
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because all the makers we speak to as well, the ones that have really found their place. So there's a thing where a lot of the makers, and and all of a sudden they'll be like, I don't know if I'll be doing this forever. And I'm like, how not? Like, you've invested so much time into this, you're so good at it. And they're like, yeah, but I don't know if I'll be doing it forever. And then actually, as you get talking to them, you realise it's because they've not tried loads. This is just what they've landed on. Whereas the makers that have maybe been introduced at a very early age, or they've got like more out of the box parents, like you're explaining there, not the sort of run of the mill cubicle worker parent that have tried loads of things. Really early on, they're finding something. They're like, no, I've tried loads of things. This is what I'm into now.
Yes.
And this is what I'm going to stay at. And there's not this sort of later in life change. Like, ultimately, everyone goes through a change at some point. Or everyone, I think, that's true to themselves goes through a change at some point. It's just, when does it happen? And it's a weird thing where when it happens later in life, people are like, oh, who's he trying to be? And it's like, probably just trying to be himself. You know, like how you opened this. Like, I'm still trying to work out who Colt Wrangler is.
Yeah.
And like, that's to be commended, you know, rather than like, why'd you start dressing like that? Why'd you start driving an old truck? You know, it's just
do whatever you want, do whatever you like.
Do you. Just do you and be unapologetically you. Like, if we can give advice to anybody from all the 50, 60 odd makers we've spoke to just on podcasts, not including the 350 makers we've published in the book, like 350 plus, like, just be you. Like, there is actually a place for everybody in the world.
Yeah.
There is actually a place for everybody in the world. And just go with it.
Yeah.
So when did the motorbike thing come around? And how?
So my dad, you know, I always thought motorcycles were cool. I liked I still do as a kid. I used to draw. I never invested a lot in the drawing. I never really got that good, but I used to like to draw boats and trucks and 18-wheelers and stuff. I mean, we were on the road a lot. So
that's what you've seen.
All we had to do, we were looking out windows. We didn't have cell phones or anything, you know. We didn't have like a DVD. There wasn't DVD players then. Like, we didn't have DVD players in the car and stuff. So there was a lot of like, oh, you're either doing your schoolwork or you're looking out the window or you're drawing on a piece of paper, you know. And so I would draw a lot. And I just naturally went towards anything that had wheels or boats. I thought trains were cool, but I never was one of those guys that got super into trains. But boats, 18-wheelers, motorcycles, all that, loved it all. Some of my first memories was once I started getting to that like 12, 13-year-old age, we had a rodeo, big rodeo we did every year in Loveland, Colorado. And I remember on the drive up there was always this big motocross track right off the interstate to the left. And it was summertime when we were going up there. So every time we were there, I mean, there was either a race or it was like just normal track day or whatever they call it at the motocross track. And I always just thought that was so cool. And that was the first like little bit of exposure I started having towards that kind of a world. And then that's when all like the freestyle motocross stuff started getting really big, and they started having video games about it. And then at that same time, my dad was hitting that age where he's like, man, maybe I should get a Harley Davidson. And so we'd go out there to Loveland, and there's like all this great motorcycle riding and stuff going out up into the mountains towards like Estes Park. So you'd see just like groups of 20, 30 dudes like riding Harleys and choppers and different stuff just around town that weekend. And my dad, you know, every time we go up there, we started going around to the dealerships. He started shopping around, and he ended up bringing a bike home. We had like a 3-horse trailer, and I think we had a horse, just one horse with us, some stuff stored in the other stall, and then we had an open stall, and we put the motorcycle in it.
Nice.
And took it home. And so, you know, my dad, he would take us on some rides, and I was scared shitless, to be honest. I would just, I don't know why, but I'd get on the back of that thing, and you know, he was going 50 miles an hour, and I'd just be squeezing him. I don't know why I was so scared. You know, it's like I'd already been getting on. I mean, I'd been bucked off horses 100 times by then. You know, had already been starting to get on, you know, stock and all that. And I was just so nervous about it. But eventually, that went away. One of my uncles, Jerry Brizzy, who's passed away, but a great man. He started he was always a guy that had a steady job, but he would always have some little side hustle. He was making money. He started selling those little like Chinese pit bikes and stuff.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and so he ended up doing that for a while, and then he had a few left over in stock, and he decided to get out of it, and he gave me one. So really, my first motorcycle I ever had was just a little, 50cc Chinese pit bike.
Yeah.
And I think I was about 13 when I ended up getting that. And so my dad just kind of taught me the basics on that thing.
Right.
You know, here's your brake, here's your clutch. Well, actually, the first time I ever got on a motorcycle was, I think I was like, I don't know, 11 or 12 or something like that. And it was a Honda Trail 70. And I was at my friend's house, and his dad got 2 of them.
Is that the fat tire twist and go thing?
Yeah.
Yeah, I know the one.
Yeah, little funky ones.
Yeah.
And they're real popular now.
Little moon bike, yeah. They're super popular now. They go for big dough.
They are. Yeah, I know. I'm never going to have one now.
And there were buttons back in the day.
Yeah,
you know?
exactly. Yeah, everybody had one in their barn, you know.
Yeah.
So we were ripping those things down the hay pasture, and I was used to riding my mountain bike, and, your right hand is your rear brake. Or at least I think it was on my mountain bike. Either way, I just grabbed a fistful of front brake on that thing and went over in and broke my collarbone. It was like first, all my friends are laughing at me, and I go to pick up the bike, and I'm like, oh, something feels wrong, So my first time I rode a motorcycle was the first bone I broke after all the crazy shit I went through to that time.
Mad.
So yeah, then moving along a few years later, I end up with that pit bike. My dad just kind of teaches me the basics. I'm ripping around the pasture all the time, taking some spills here or there. And then I went from that to, I don't know how this happened or how my dad just let me do this, but he let me ride his, he still had that bike. I think it was a 2010 Heritage Softail Classic. So it's a big Harley Softail.
Big old bike, yeah.
Yeah, it's a big old bike. I'm like 15 at this point. And no helmet still, and I rode it to school, But it was a super small town. We were like 5 miles out of town, and there's hardly no traffic. There's no lights. It's just like 2 stop signs, and I'm at school. And so I started riding that thing to school, and my dad actually had it for sale at that time. And like the 4th time I rode it to school, I mean, I was like getting really stoked about it. It sold. So I had basically, just a week of riding it to school, and it was gone. And then I was like, all right, I have to buy a motorcycle.
Right.
And it was the first and only loan I've ever got. I think I borrowed like $3,000 from the bank or something, and got that R6, which was so funny because I'm just looking on Craigslist at the time. That's all there was. There wasn't the Facebook Marketplace or anything like that. It was like your thrifty nickel, or I think that's what they call it. It's like a paper that used to be in all the stores around here that was free, and it was just a classified paper.
Right, okay.
And it was like Craigslist ads, but just printed out without pictures and all that. You just had to call somebody, and they had a description. So you had that, and then you had Craigslist. So I started looking on Craigslist. My dad was back up living in Fort Worth at that time, so I was going to visit him, and I was looking at Craigslist there. I see this bike, this R6. It's a 2001 Yamaha R6, and it's Cadillac pearl white, polished frame, 6-inch stretch swing arm, like lowered, I mean, just totally gaudy. But actually really clean. Like it was just chrome and pearl white.
That was like a total style at the time, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Like stretching swing arms, and like all the lines were off, but it was like a total style.
Oh yeah.
Like the Hayabusas with like 4 or 5 foot swing arms.
Oh,
and
that
stuff.
shit's crazy. Yeah. So this was like a very moderate, because it was like a moderate stretch. I don't even know if it was 60. It might have been like even a little less, but it was a moderate stretch, and it didn't have crazy paint. It was Cadillac pearl. But the guy was this club owner in Dallas, and he had it built to match his Cadillac Escalade truck. So he would like put it in the back of the truck, I guess, and take it to shows. Anyway, it's just funny that was like my first bike. And honestly, if I could find that bike, I'd buy it in a heartbeat. Like that's like one of my most favorite motorcycles.
Man, we were having exact. So I used to have a Ford F-150 back in Scotland, 89 model.
Is that a hard thing to get over there?
Really hard. Certainly an older one like that. And I've since come back to America, I was like, why did I get rid of that truck? It was the coolest truck ever. You know, it was the 4.9 litre straight six, like big bench seat. So I've been looking for it, and I found it last night on Facebook
I remember you showing me that.
Marketplace.
It's so
And someone's just
banged up.
smashed the front of it, and it's gone. Like, it is a total write-off. And they're trying to sell it for what I bought it for when it was a good running truck.
Yeah.
And because I've been having exactly this thing, I'm like, I'm now at a point in my life where, like, I'm a little bit more financially stable. Like, I could afford a toy. Like, I could afford, like, a $2,000 truck again. I could afford to buy that back.
Yep.
And I'm looking at it and I'm like, it's gone.
Yeah.
I was gutted last night.
Yeah.
Gutted.
Dude,
But you always get those things where you just want them back, don't you?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, exactly. There's been I don't always get that on everything because I like to just kind of try something out and then, let me try something else out. And I usually don't regret stuff. I like cherish the memories. It's been fun, but moving on.
Yeah.
And, but there's been a couple things. I mean, that bike, I could still find one, similar to it. That wouldn't be too tough. But I had one truck. There's only one vehicle I regret ever selling, and it was I got it in the trade. It was a 72 Ford F100, but somebody had taken a 12-valve Cummins diesel motor in it.
The 6BT number.
With the 6BT with the 5-speed get rag, put it in there, and then they put the dually rear axle on it, and then the hubs and everything from the Dodge, but it still had the the Ford arms. I forget, what do they call those?
Oh, the bad trailing leaf arms. Yeah, mine's had them where it's like the pivots at the pivot for the offside on the driver's side, and it's like the big sort of dune buggy truck.
Yes, exactly.
I can't remember what they're called, but I know the ones you mean.
I always forget, yeah. So it still had that from the F100. So it really was this great combination because the frames are way better on those Fords. The Dodge frames just crack like hell and all that. And I ended up, and that truck was clean. It was nice, and I think I sold it for like $6,500. And now, later on, I'm like, man, I'd really like to have a 6BT again. And I start looking, and I'm like, just total trash. And they're wanting like 10 grand for these trucks. And they're already gonna, even if they're not trash, they're already gonna have a load of problems just because of the materials they used to build those trucks was crap.
Yep.
The Cummins was the only thing that kept them afloat.
Yeah, exactly.
And I ended up finding this one I have out here, but I ended up finding one like really cheap. I got really lucky on it. I had to really dig deep and find like the shittiest, ad on Facebook Marketplace where you could barely tell what the truck looked like. You had to drive 3 hours to get out there. And
the one that most people are turning their nose up at.
Exactly. Yeah. And then it was like, oh, this actually is a really great deal. So I got lucky on that deal, but yeah, I'm noticing it's like this stuff is just getting harder and harder to get. Used to, you could go buy some shitbox Geo Metro for $500, $1,000. I was like getting a hankering the other day. I was like, man, you know what? Because I have this big, diesel dually truck, which I don't really need. I'm like, man, I'd really love like a dorky, like boxy little mini car, compact car. I like weird shit like that, or a little Volkswagen or something. I'm like, man, I bet I could find like a little Geo Metro for like $1,000.
Yep.
I mean, that'd be so much fun and rip around. You don't care if you bang it up a little bit.
Yeah.
I started looking. I'm like, $2,500, $3,000. I'm like, dude, what? It's a Geo Metro.
There's not even that in scrap value in it. Do you know what I mean? They're like a 300, 400, 500 kilo car. They're crap.
Yeah. And I'm like, you can't. It's so hard to find $1,000 car anymore.
Yeah.
The other day, I did buy a Cadillac, a '99 Cadillac limousine for $1,500. I thought about that. That's gonna be my new daily driver. I got to do a little bit of work to it. It's actually really nice shape. But I was like, I just wanted a limousine. I want to put all my buddies in it and put some Longhorns on the hood and like go to rodeos. Just have a good time.
That's wild.
Yeah.
So you just bought a limousine and put some Longhorns. Man, that would be so good.
Yeah, that's my toy. I've been wanting a limousine for actually since I was a kid. I've always wanted a limousine.
That's funny.
So you got one.
I got one. That's my toy. Yeah, it's not quite the 30 miles to the gallon, but it's still fun.
That's absolutely bonkers.
Why not, hey?
Dude, hey, why not? If you can. Yeah,
I mean, just advice to people listening. don't have a girlfriend. You know.
If you see something you want, buy it.
Then exactly. Then you could throw some money at some stuff like that. Otherwise, you got to make a lot of money.
Yeah, Kate's like, sorry, I've taken all that away from you.
You seem pretty cool. You seem like you'd be down to help wrench on something.
You're pretty good at stuff like that. We've been doing a mass renovation on our house, and you've been pretty handy. So, one day.
I'm useful.
We talked a while back about getting like a little Mini or something like that, or like a Vespa, something for you to wrench on and give a hand, something that's not big and intimidating, something that's kind of like small and easy to get started. Like a little red classic Mini or something like that would be cool. Rip all the suspension out, bolt it all shut. Be so good.
Yeah, that'd
Just
be fun.
rag it.
You should.
But again, you know, they were like the Volkswagen Caddy, the little Caddy Rabbit ones. You used to pick them up like 500, 800 quid back home, and now they're like 3, 4, 5 grand.
Yeah, they're crazy.
Fucking nuts.
And rusted too.
Yeah.
And I had one actually. And I got it, but I did well on it because I bought a it was a Mark III, I think, GTI from a boss, and the guy I was working for at the time, he got it cheap. He had it, a CV joint went bad on it. It was just sitting there. I kind of needed something more to drive. I was driving a shitty band van at the time, and he's like, I'll sell you this for $500. He's like, I'll just take it out of your check every week, and then you can fix it, start driving it. I fixed it. I love that thing. It was manual. AC worked great. It was, the paint was faded, so it was originally red, but it was pink now. But I ended up like cleaning it up a little bit, buffing the paint. I love that little car. And, you know, I was just kind of looking around online, and I saw a Caddy, and I ended up trading the guy straight across for it. So I ended up getting a Caddy for $500, basically.
That's wild.
It was great, yeah.
That's wild.
And then
you
I had
not find them anymore. You can't buy a Caddy bed, a rusted out bed for 500 quid now.
I know, it's crazy, right?
It's nuts.
And this one was good. Like, it wasn't rusted or anything. I mean, it was running and driving. It was all current. So I started driving it to work. It was my daily driver, and I love that little thing. And it wasn't the diesel one, but still better than nothing. Getting on the highway, to get to work at that time, I had to get on the interstate on I-10, and everyone's running 75 miles an hour, and it's just 2 lanes, and so there's a lot of trucks on that lane too, so they'd be whoa. And the on-ramp was like this steep, short on-ramp, which is the worst thing to have in a little 4-banger Volkswagen. It's like,
what was it, like 1.6 petrol producing the thick end of like 65 brake horsepower?
So I'm getting up, and you couldn't really see like what trucks were coming until you were halfway up that ramp, and at this point
you're like this far off the ground.
I'm going all of like 30 miles an hour, you know, and that's all I could do. So I would get up there, and these trucks would be zooming past it, and there might be 2 trucks side by side, like he's not moving over from my ass. So I would have to like get up to the top and like stay on the shoulder and pick up speed while 18-wheelers were blowing by me until I could figure out how to get over. That was just like my everyday experience.
Nothing like a bit of a dopamine hit in the morning, a bit of adrenaline.
So that thing was cool, and then I ended up selling it for, I don't know, probably like $3,000 or something.
Wow.
And then I saw it on Craigslist like a month later. The guy blew the motor in it, and I was like, oh, sorry, dude.
Probably trying to get on the interstate.
Probably.
Oh, man.
Yeah. So
did you start with building cars before you moved to the bike world?
I had to think about that. Yeah, I guess I kind of did. Because I started in, you know, the tire and lube deal. And I had to beg for that job, by the way. And they wouldn't even pay me minimum wage. They're like, we'll pay you $5 an hour. Minimum wage, it was like $6.25 or something like that. They're like, $5 and you're gonna clean the toilet. I was like, okay. I just, you know, I'll do it. Yeah. So I just kind of kept going in that direction. I've always was interested in the custom stuff. At that time, there was, you know, ideally, if I could have done anything, of course I looked into like Wyotech and this, that, and the other, but I was just really nervous about going into debt to try to figure out if I liked it. You know what I mean? And, but there was the most interesting thing I saw, if I could have done it, I would have in a heartbeat, was, you may have heard of it, it's called the Fab School. I don't know if it still exists, probably does, in California, and basically it was just centered around basically building technicians for the Baja racing industry.
Oh, okay.
So it was all chassis fabrication,
Oh, wow.
suspension, geometry, basic, mechanics, like all that. And
It's a super niche thing to learn as well. Like, and it's like, especially at that level of racing, it's like hyper focused.
yeah. And I have a buddy that has a career in that industry, and he went to that school.
Right.
And that's how he got his start. He went to that school, and now he's all over all the time. He's always
Nice.
gone. Hudson Hall. I actually did an interview with him on my podcast, Colt Wrangler Radio. Look it up.
Yeah.
It's new. I'm lazy about it, so I don't have a lot going on there. But
Yeah, we can share it out there.
so Hudson Hall went to the fab school, but ideally at that time, if I could have done anything, it would have been go there.
Right.
Because I just something about the fabrication was really cool, and the TV shows were out at that time, American Chopper, all that.
Yep.
And I didn't really care for the bikes, but I liked the process. I liked seeing the A to B. Like it really was just exciting for me.
Yeah.
But I had nothing going on. I was changing oil and stuff. So I kept doing that and bounced around, kind of put music more into the forefront. So whatever job I could find that's kind of interesting while I focus on my band or whatever I'm doing at the time. And then I ended up I started tinkering around on my own stuff and had a Harley that I was building into like a cafe bike.
Right.
And it looked kind of cool. It had the right lines. Like the work wasn't really that great. I was building stuff out of like scrap and different things, but the lines were right on it. And I like pull up to this little bar during the day in San Antonio, Texas, and this guy comes out and looks at the bike and he's like, "Man, this is really cool. Like, you built this?" I was like, "Yeah, I've been working on it a little bit, basically in my backyard. I didn't have a garage at that time." And he goes, "Man, I work at this truck shop. We do like custom trucks, like lift kits and stuff, the big obnoxious trucks."
Yeah.
And he's like, "We need technicians right now." And I was like, "Well, I know some things." And I got to the point at some of those tire and lube shops where I was helping them do, I was like changing out shocks and helping them do some suspension stuff, and was doing like 18-wheeler tires and started doing a little bit more like difficult things, not just, changing 100 car tires. And so I was like, man, I kind of know a little bit, and I had been investing some money in some tools and stuff, and so I ended up going and taking an interview, and I got that job. I was like kind of an entry-level technician. And they, they let me make a lot of mistakes over there. I wasn't getting paid well. I didn't have any sort of insurance or anything like that. So I did get hurt pretty bad during that time, and that made life very difficult, but you just keep pushing through. And, man, I learned a lot. I was putting on, I was going in there and you're helping another guy, and it's taking you, 2 or 3 days to do a lift kit, and then next thing you know, you're doing a lift kit in a day.
Yeah.
Pulling all the suspension part, putting all the stuff back in, and we're putting on like automatic steps and hitches and auxiliary lights and all this different. Yeah. So it's not what I wanted to do. I'm not like super stoked on these gaudy like lifted trucks. Half the time we were lifting 2-wheel drive trucks, which is funny.
Yeah.
And they'll spend $3,000 on wheels, but they don't want to spend more than $500 on a lift kit.
Yep.
It's like that kind of deal. But
they buy the tires for how they look, not what they do.
Yeah, exactly. It's that whole thing. But it was great for me to break into that, and I just kept that ball rolling. And I went to a hot rod shop a little bit after that. So then that was a little bit more like, oh, now we're chopping shit up. Now we're doing more welding and more cutting. And but I always really loved the bike thing. And one of that first truck shop I worked at, one of the owner of that shop, one of his friends, his name's Chuck, he has Benz and bikes in San Antonio, and they build those crazy big wheel baggers, like $100,000 bikes with the crazy paint jobs and all that. I worked out a deal where I started going over there on Saturdays to clean the shop for them, just to be around the bikes. I'd ride my motorcycle over there, work on my bike there a little bit after hours. They'd hand me takeoff parts for free and stuff like that. And so that was my real first experience on getting a little bit more deeper into motorcycles. And I don't know, I naturally went towards them more. I think it's because, for one, it's you could afford it a little bit more. You know, you could get a lot more bang for your buck. Like, you could have a really cool custom bike for the price of, you know, a nice set of wheels on your custom car or your C10 or whatever.
Yeah,
you know?
and what always appealed to me about, there's two things that always appeals to me about the bike side of things, and like I say, I do a bit of design work in that, and I try and employ this in the design work, is that the less they've got on them, the cooler they are.
Yeah.
Like, the less you've got on it, the cooler it becomes, and everything's accessible.
Yep.
You know, with a car, you'd have to pull body panels, you'd have to pull... Some cars, you need, like, the Defenders and stuff, you need to lift the whole body off to do any work on the chassis.
Yeah.
And that's just nuts. Like, you need space to do that with a bike. You can... If you've got a garage that you can fit two bikes in, you can work on one bike in it. You know?
You can do it in your living room.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, if you have to.
Hear that, Kate? You could do it in your living room.
Yeah.
Kate's like, no, you can't.
Hey, you're building out the house, just build it for building bikes too.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's... So I think that was... Motorcycles were always appealing to me, but being a broke-ass musician, you know, working for $9 an hour, it's like, and wanting to have something cool and different, I think the easy route to go was motorcycles. Plus, I loved riding them, you know.
Yeah.
And I just kind of stuck with that and just kept diving deep into that. And yeah, I was trying to, like, you know, kind of get a job in that space. I couldn't really find anything. And I started just doing more and more and getting a little bit more attention for, you know, like I said, you know, the quality, the build quality wasn't the best, but, you know, it looked right.
Yeah.
You know, so it's like, yeah, my welds sucked and I couldn't even TIG weld and, you know, couldn't shape, I couldn't do any of that. But if you can get the lines right, then you can get the skill later. So,
yeah, if you've got the eye.
Yes.
And you can, like, we say this a lot we both graduated from product design. If you can't teach the eye of design, you can teach all the practicalities of it. You can teach the engineering. So, like, when I've employed a couple of lads under me as, like, seconds to me as mechanical engineers, and I look for product designers, because you can't teach design. You either have it or you don't.
Yes.
You can teach the maths and the engineering side of it.
Yep.
So you obviously had the eye.
Yeah, I had the eye, and I just, I kept going in that direction, and then it got to where it was like, oh, dude, this looks pretty cool. Like, hey, can I bring my bike by? Maybe you could, like, make me a sissy bar, or do this, or do that. And, you know, I'd always do, you know, something on my bike that was pushing me. So, like, the first time I built an exhaust, you know, I was working at that motorcycle shop on the weekends, and they just had loads of, like, takeoff headers and shit that would just go into the scrap. So I took, like, I got a 55-gallon barrel and filled it full of exhaust, and I had that for years, because I used to just cut all the pipe off of that.
Cut all the bits off it,
Yeah, and I remember the first day that I actually threw all that out, because I had gotten to the point where I could weld stainless, and I was, like, buying the parts to build the exhaust, and that was, like, a turning point to where it's like,
right.
I'm not just chopping up, like, random headers to make exhaust anymore. Like, I'm buying the materials, I'm welding it with a TIG welder, and it was like, oh, it's funny how those steps are so apparent. It's like, oh, this is just junk now. This used to be a treasure for me. Now it's trash again.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would just take all those headers, chop them up, make myself a sketchy little exhaust, and you know, maybe do that twice, and then the third time I'd do it for somebody else.
Yeah.
You know, and so I just kept growing with that, and it turned into me like, well, you know, I'm broke and starving already. I might as well be broke and starving, working for myself, doing something I like.
Yep.
And so I spent the next 7 years, these past 7 years, doing that and growing that. And, you know, from basically just being able to MIG weld a little bit and wrench a little bit to everything I do now. And then about 6 months ago, you know, I've known the guys at Revival Cycles for a while and been taking my bikes to their shows since, I think, like 2015 or something like that.
Oh, okay.
And so I've had that relationship built. And, you know, they kind of came knocking on my door a little bit, like, you know, they seen me grow and they needed a fabricator, and I'm local, and, you know, I can...
The stars aligned, yeah.
Yeah, they just aligned and it worked out. And so, yeah, I shut the shop down. I was kind of getting burnt out anyway. You know, because a lot of it's just proving yourself, putting good bikes out there. It's not I say I had a business. I did that for tax purposes. Really, it was just a way to, how can I feed myself and try to build like a bike each year.
Yeah.
You know, take it to a couple shows, whatever ones I can afford to go to, and just see how it grows. And then I just kept making connections and growing, and then so this is the next phase for me is being here in Austin and working for Revival.
Do you think you've lost anything going to work for someone, or do you think actually, like, are they the right employer that rather than lose something by going to work for someone, you're actually gaining loads?
Yeah, and that you know, that was something that I had to think about, because if you would have actually the first time, let me see, it was last year at the show last year. I had brought this bike, this Yamaha XS650. It's the nicest bike I've ever built. I really spent a lot of time on it. It was one of those ones to where I'm like, it was the first time the customer basically let me make all the choices.
Right.
And we had a budget, but he wasn't like hard on it. Mm-hmm. We got to the point where we reached the budget and we just kept going. We ended up going like 3 times over.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Which is funny now, because I was like apologizing every other day to him. And now now that I am getting more into the actual industry, I'm seeing what people are spending. I was like, oh, that's nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was like, I felt bad then. Now I realize I'm like, thank you for the opportunity, and also it worked out great because you got a good deal, and I got to expand.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Yeah, you can compare that to what someone like a prolific shop like Revival would charge to that, and you realise how good a deal this guy got.
Exactly. Yeah, because I just didn't have the overhead. You know, that's the thing. So trying to remember where I was going with that. About what I gain and lose.
Yeah.
So when I first finished that bike, nicest bike I've ever done, I'd take it to the hand-built show, and Chris, who is one of the guys that like started Revival. It started in his garage, actually. He comes up to me at the show. He's like, "You want a job?" Yeah, and I was like, "Man, I appreciate that. Like, I like you guys. I like the idea of working with you guys, but I'm just not quite there, you know." And then they kind of hit me up months later just to come in and actually just help them finish something for like a weekend.
Yeah.
And then I did that and got to work in the shop for like 3 days, and I was like, no, maybe this is it. And then I started thinking a little bit more, and it took me working in the shop. I'd already been to the shop. I knew what it was like. You know, I knew a lot of their employees, but it took me being in there to be like, for it to click, for like, oh, all those barriers that you have that are holding you back from like growing your skill, it is taken away if you take this job. Because what would happen is I would, work on this bike for, work on a bike for 6 months, a year. I would always have like something on the side too that was a little less custom, or I'm going to build an exhaust for this guy, but then I have my main bike build over here.
Yeah.
So I'd always have 1 or 2 that were more quick jobs.
Yeah.
And but my actual fab time was pretty low.
Right.
Because I would, I'd build a gas tank and build an exhaust, and then it's like, all right, I'm fixing mechanical problems. I'm tearing this down. This is going and getting vapor blasted. I'm building a wiring harness. I'm running back and forth. This is going to powder coating. I get stuck in a position where I need a part, or I break a part, and now I'm on eBay for 3 hours trying to find something.
Yeah.
I get something in, it's the wrong, I got to return it. Okay, now let me shut down the shop, go across town, go to the post office. Well, next thing you know, it's like half your day was just so fast. I'm not sitting there welding all day. I'm not fabricating all day. I'm doing it a very small amount for this long period of time till that bike is done. And with this job, I'm only doing fab work. So once the fab's done on that bike, I send it to the guys next door, and they start building the wiring harness, or they start building the wheels, or they're rebuilding the suspension.
That's an interesting view, isn't it?
And so, I've already with working with them for 6 months, I bet the amount of work that I've been doing over there fab-wise would probably equate to a year and a half of what I would have gotten.
Wow.
I'm probably like 3xing it almost.
That's good.
So I saw that as an opportunity to like, I think I'm already seeing it a little bit more with some of my, because I wouldn't always get the metal shape either, because it was like, not everybody could afford like a gas tank or something.
Yeah.
Or, you know, maybe I would just do a tail section, like, okay, we'd have to buy the tank, but let me build a tail section or something. So I'm doing, and I like the shaping a lot. And so I'm getting to do more of it, and then they're throwing me stuff that's maybe they already kind of had a design for, which is difficult because it's easy for you to be like, I know how to shape this way. So you start basing your design a little bit off of what you know how to do. But if somebody throws you a design, it's like, man, I wouldn't have made that line. Actually, I don't know how to make that line. And then I'm having to sit there and figure out how to do like I had to learn how to do a reverse curve, which I didn't even know what it was called. So it's where it's like, it concaves like a banana, right? But then concaves like the opposite way, sideways. Yeah, that would be it. So it goes this way and this way.
Oh, okay.
So it's hard, hard to. But anyway, that I'd never shaped anything like that in metal, and I was trying it, and I was like, this. And I have a little laptop in the fab room. I get on there, and I get on YouTube, and I watch a 5-minute video. And I'm like, it was actually a really simple technique, and you know, I screwed around by myself for like an hour or so, and then boom, watch this guy on YouTube, and I was like, that's it. Now I've unlocked like one more way I can shape a piece of metal, bend it a certain way that I just didn't know about. And honestly, I wouldn't have done that if it was me by myself. I wouldn't have went that direction.
Yeah, that job would have never come to you, would it?
Yeah, I was just like, no, I'm going to make it. It's like, you want to make it the best you can, but also you can't spend all day. You have a certain amount of money you can spend on this job, like, and you got to save a little bit for yourself. You got to pay your bills and eat.
Yeah.
So it's taken a lot of those factors out, and it's pushed me, and it's been exactly what I wanted it to be. So
that's good.
I'm at a place now to where it's like with Revival, to where now I feel like I've spent the last 7 years, you know, building the rocket ship, and now it's like about to take launch.
Nice.
That's how I kind of feel about it. You know,
Nice.
Now I'm gonna see some real growth in like my skill.
Yeah, and you'd see that growth with Revival.
Yeah, already.
Yeah,
just like, and I'm doing a lot more. Like everything we're doing, I like it too. It pairs really well because we have similar taste. We like to work with the same materials. It's like I like to make aluminum tanks and fenders. I like to make stainless exhausts. I like to make stainless brackets. I like all the non-corrosive stuff.
Yeah.
And then also they like the titanium stuff, and so I'm getting to like practice on some scrap titanium I never would have tried to weld before.
That's wicked.
So, you know, my stainless welding, you know, has increased majorly.
Oh, I'll bet.
Yeah, because I'm doing a lot more of it, and I'm taking note, and I'm like, oh, this is, you know, I'm getting it just a little bit more right.
Nice.
To where it's like, oh, the welds, each exhaust I do, since I've been there, I've done 2 exhausts, and no, maybe one. Yeah, 2. I like modified one, and then I just finished building another one, and it's like each one I could tell like, oh, the last one I did was the best one.
Nice.
Welding wise, you know.
Yeah.
Maybe it wasn't the craziest design I've done, but the welds were the best.
Right.
And then the brackets that I welded for were the best that I've ever done up to that point. So it was like, oh, cool. Like I'm actually within this 6 months. I look back of the first. And it's funny because we just finished a bike that it's going to be at the Hemel show. If anybody's there, it's a Royal Enfield. It'll probably be online and all that stuff too. It's a Ferrari red Royal Enfield GT.
Nice. We'll look out for that.
Yeah, it's a cool one. And done a lot of fab work to that. And but it's subtle. You can't really tell too much. And so I was looking. We were doing the final touches, final assembly like on Friday. And I'm looking at my fender brackets that I made for the front fender, which they look fine, but they're stainless. And I'm looking at the welds of that, and I'm like, yeah, this would have gone in the trash
Yeah.
if I would did that today.
Nice.
Yeah, not necessarily in the trash, but it was like there was just a difference between the brackets that I built that week versus the bracket I built when I first got in there 6 months ago. I can see a difference big time. And
That's
sometimes
cool.
you forget that. Like I actually had to go look at it again and be like, oh. So that tells me right there, it's like, all right, I'm in the right place.
That's
I'm,
real cool.
I'm having
That's
this,
really cool. Yeah.
like I said, I'm kind of kicking the dead horse now, but it's like 3x, I think, is what I'm doing as far as skill. Growing.
That's wicked, and it's really cool that you found your story's kind of backwards, because most people go and work for a company and then are like, I'm going to go and do it my way, but actually
Yes.
you've found a way to work for Revival, which, from what I know of them and having followed them for years, are a really cool company that's actually fully supportive of you being a maker. And
Yes.
that's not common.
And they're letting me do a lot of the design stuff too. Like,
Nice.
it's a discussion, but that's the thing. It's like I'm part of the design discussion,
That's cool.
you know, which is
Important.
really cool
Yeah.
because that scratches my creative itch.
So you're getting a bit of all.
Yeah, exactly. Because
Good.
that's what I started getting good at, you know? That, like I said, I was more, I've been having to catch up my skill level to meet what I could see. Like, I could get the lines right, but maybe my welds weren't the best or whatever, you know? So and they've had the problem of, it's like, yeah, they could hire a fab guy who's, 10 times the welder that I am, but he doesn't have the creative eye.
Yeah, he's not got the creative motorbike eye, or he's not a motorbike guy, or he's
Exactly.
not a... Yeah, and that's...
You just understand it all,
Yeah.
really.
So it's a perfect pairing, you
That's
know?
wicked.
And so yeah, that's been really cool, and I'm excited about that, and the opportunities that it's going to bring, and the stuff that they've already involved me in. It's just cool, and yeah, I did do it backwards, but not by choice. Like I was thinking about that.
Yeah.
I just wanted to work for somebody. I wanted the job. I didn't want to go into business for myself. It's like the numbers and the legalities and all
Yeah,
that
the business
stuff.
part of it's hard.
Yeah.
It starts to take away from the reason you got into it.
Yeah,
You
exactly.
know? It does for us every day. So
But no one would give me an opportunity.
yeah,
Like
now you found it.
even that bike shop that I was working at, where I was cleaning the floors and stuff. I mean, I was that first bike I kind of built that started getting a little bit of attention. Like I was building it at that time, and so I was already trying to do it. But I'm still going to a motorcycle shop and cleaning their toilet.
Yeah,
And it's like I'm trying to get into it. I'm trying to work for somebody to do this kind of stuff. And I thought maybe that deal would work out, and it didn't, which at the time was kind of a little bit crushing.
Yeah.
But now I realize it's like, now looking back, it's like, that's not I put myself in an even more pressure situation working for myself, and I increased my growth faster.
Yeah.
I think if I were in that position, I mean, it's not quite my nature, but you could easily get a little bit, you just fall into that place, you fall into your role, and then all of a sudden you're stunted. You're not really growing that much.
Yeah.
You're not really pushing yourself because you're not in a pressure situation.
yeah, because you're comfortable.
Yeah, you're really just putting on kits.
Yeah.
And maybe you're making a little something here or there, but you're not, I'll wake up and be like, oh my God, I just told this guy I would make aluminum bodywork for his, the Zero, that first Zero I did. I didn't know how to weld aluminum when I took on that job.
Really,
Yeah.
that's fucking nuts.
So I'm like, and those kind of situations, but I told the guy I was going to do it. I'm going to do it. And those situations are what make you grow.
Yeah.
And you might not always get that, working for somebody else.
Yeah, yeah.
They might just
absolutely.
sub it out. It's like they can't risk that.
Yeah.
They got
That's
real
a
money
business
on the line.
decision, isn't it?
Exactly.
It's a business decision. So you're with Revival now, which seems to be a great fit.
It is.
Seems to be a wicked good fit. What's next for you? Do you see where do you lay in the fold in Revival, or do you see yourself just working your way up in that? It sounds like you're already well in the fold in the short 6 months that you've been working there.
Yeah, I'm gonna do what I've always done and not think about it too much.
Yeah, this is true.
Nice. I like that.
Yeah, it seemed to have it seemed to have done me well over the years. I've always like kind of felt the pressure to like need to know what to do or to have it figured out or have a plan. And I'm like, yeah, I need to have a plan, I need to have a goal, I need to have something. And then I just kind of like think about it for 5 minutes, and then it's out of my mind already. And I think it's different for each person. I think there's some people that do really well with having a goal and having a plan, and that's just how they operate. With me, I think it's better to just go with the flow and just be aware. Keep your eyes open, like, always be looking for, and this isn't just for Revival, this is just for anywhere or anywhere you work for. Looking for the red flags, right? Not riding things out too long, or looking for opportunities with your own business or for the business that you work with. Looking out for opportunities for them. What kind of extra value can you bring to them, to help this thing move forward, move further along, or move yourself up within a company or a business. And so I think that's just a good way to go about it instead of having goals. You never know what's going to come along. Like if you, when I was in school, thankfully with my parents and how they were, it being so unconventional, they never gave me any sort of like real pressure to like, all right, you need to figure out what you want to do. You need to go to college. You need to do this. You need to do that. Now, my brother, on the other hand, he was that guy. He already was saying at 9 years old what school he wanted to go to, and he went to it. And it was something that was really hard to get into, but he did it. He's that guy.
Yeah.
Right? I am not that guy. And so I think it's easy to get pressured into stuff thinking that you got to know. Like how are my teachers supposed to know about this industry, that you can even make a living doing it?
Yeah, that's the whole thing. We talk about that a lot, like they're just not aware of it.
No, where I grew up, it was like you could get you could get a good job. You could make $12 an hour, $15 an hour at the sand plant, making sand for fracking, and have benefits. Or you could work at the feed store for $10 an hour, or you could work at this ranch for $30,000 a year, and they'll give you a house and a company truck.
Yep.
And that's like it. Mm-hmm. That's all you have. Or you move to the city and you figure something else out. Yeah. And then and then there's all the tech stuff and all this different crazy industries. And how was I supposed to know that like at 30 years old I'd be working for a company building custom motorcycles for really wealthy people?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You know? And that's just not something that exists. That's not something. How are my teachers supposed to know that? Right? Yeah. So if I would have gone with my plan, how am I supposed to plan for that?
Yeah, I hear that.
Like, I don't even know it exists. I didn't even know. I mean, you see it on, I guess there is a little bit of visual, like you saw it on TV a little bit, so you knew that there's some stuff like that out there.
But that was very, like, showbizified. That was like, you wouldn't be faulted for just thinking that was all made up for the TV. Mm. Like, to realise that that's actually a thing that real people can do.
That's an actual job that you can do.
Yeah, it's not detached. Mm-hmm. It's a real life thing. Like, it just wasn't a thing for a long time. And in the motorbike scene in itself, like, super zooming in on exactly what we're talking about, that just went bang in a big way.
It did.
Like you're saying, like, it's super wealthy people. It's the people that have gone to the city and they've done the college degrees and they're working for massive tech companies. They're trying to buy into the culture of the little shop that's just hashing it out. Mm-hmm. And these people are, rather than being part of the culture, and I'm not speaking ill of them because everyone's got their place in the world.
Yeah, exactly. We can't exist. I can't I'm on salary right now. I can't be on salary without these guys that figured out to make a lot of money somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
But it's interesting that them being at the top of the financial ladder, as it were, the top of the success ladder as per the norm, they're buying into these small industries and they're buying into small makers, and it's all one big circle.
Yeah,
and that's when places like Revival can do really well, and small makers can do really well off of the back of that. Mm-hmm. It's wicked,
and it's really cool, and it sounds so amazing and idealistic, and it really is.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I mean, like, I could be digging a ditch right now. Yeah. Or I could. I mean, it's luck of the draw, man. I could be in a cobalt mine in Africa or something. Yep. Like with the worst possible, there's so many other scenarios that could have happened. So in the grand scheme of things, like I am very much living an idealistic life. Like I get hurt, I could just go into a hospital. Yeah. Like a lot of people don't have that option. Yeah. So if you boil it down that far, it's like, it's just such a blessing, right?
Yeah.
But also, and it's hard not to know this until you start to get into the industry. When you, from the outside, it looks very cool. You know, and you see these guys, you see, you know, Jesse James on TV cutting stuff up, everything's rad, you know. These businesses have, you know, their struggles. At the end of the day, we're still artists.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. We're just making stuff. Yeah. And no one, you know, ask anybody. Everybody knows it's very few and far between of artists that make it, get rich, do whatever. It's, you know, it's for the love of it and it's for the passion of it. Mm-hmm. So if you're like into this, if you're wanting, do you want to make money or do you want to make cool shit? And you got to make up your mind, basically.
Well, that's it. There's different wealths, isn't there? There's wealth that's financial money, tokens in a bank account, which is, let's be honest, it's what it all is. Mm-hmm. You know, it's tokens that you swap for other things.
Yes.
But there's also the wealth in looking back and being like, dude, at 31 years old, you've got some wild stories. That's a wealth in itself.
It is, yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yes. I agree with that. And that's what I've always gone to. That's why I didn't have the plan. I was like, I'd rather have the story than like the figured out plans, you know? And honestly, that's a little bit of that is my plan. I do kind of have a plan. And it's and I started like telling myself this, I think a couple of years ago, is like, what's going to sound good in a book? Like if I wrote it down in a book, then
that's a nice outlook.
Then I'm going to say yes to it within a reasonable thing, right? So it's like, you know, that's kind of what I jumped back into the rodeo stuff again. I just wanted to go hang out around it again. Mm-hmm. I had no plans of jumping back into it. I just wanted to be around it. I missed it. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then you just get close to that fire and it's like, let me just dip a little toe in. And the next thing you know, you're gone every weekend.
Yeah.
You know? So and that was kind of a justification. It was like, man, don't be so scared, like you know, it's going to be stories you're going to have for the rest of your life.
Mm-hmm. And we've enjoyed listening to your story.
Oh man, I've loved this. This
so
has been
far.
wicked. Yeah.
Yeah, it's great.
It feels like you could be like the old grandpa sitting sitting looking out onto his prairie on the rocking chair, but at like 30 years old. That's fucking nuts.
But you wild. Know, well, thank you. That feels good to hear. But it does come at a price, you know. Yeah. And I've been very blessed and very fortunate. But like right now, I you know, I did permanent damage to my knee about 4 weeks ago. I got to have surgery here soon, have this knee all redone. I tore like everything in it you could tear up. Oh, getting on a bucking horse, like, of course I could have stepped off my front porch wrong and done the same thing.
Yeah.
But it just, you know, happened to be. So that, I mean, I finally had a project bike again. I haven't had a bike in years. Finally, I got a good deal on a bike, first generation Gixxer I've been wanting for forever. Started customizing it. I'm 1 weekend away from riding it, right? Screw this leg up. All of a sudden, you know, I tried to go back to work. I toughed it out for like a week and then it just kept getting worse. Couldn't put any pressure on it. And then I had to come back here and basically lay in bed for a week and a half. Couldn't really move it.
Oh, goodness.
And so sold the bike. You know, it's like I needed that. I needed that extra cash and that extra security. So bye project. You know, I got a little wild this weekend at one of my buddy's weddings. Got a little drunks and, you know, they had the mariachi band and shit. And I started dancing a lot and now my foot's numb. Like I can't feel it. I'm like, all right, well, maybe I just screwed it up more, you know? So it's like, you're gonna pay a price. Like it's, you know, at the time when, you know, it's excruciating pain to walk to the bathroom a few weeks ago. It's like, it's not fun then. It's like, yeah, this was real dumb to go get on this horse. You know, this is real stupid to do this or do that. Yeah. So if you do decide to take that dive and like go by what I was saying, it's like, what's going to sound good in the book? Also remember, there's going to be those times where you're going to really hate yourself. Mm-hmm. Yeah, like, it's just part of it. It's part of the trade, you know? Yep. You want to go do something crazy like, but you got to be thankful. It's like I was saying earlier, I'm not in a cobalt mine. I'm also, you know,
Well, you've had the opportunity to do these things, and that's what you need to be thankful.
Exactly.
You've had the choice
had
and
the
the
choice.
opportunity, and you've got the ability to be made better when something goes wrong. And
Yep.
that's, like, if you've got the choice, the only crime you can really commit is to not try it.
Yeah.
To not take it on.
Agreed, man. And I've seen the other side of that thing too, to where, you know, I've seen people that are, you know, full grown or getting later in life who took the safest route possible, and it works. It works for, like I said, everybody's different, so there's no one way for anything. But I've seen the other side of that life to where it didn't take the risk, and let's do what's logical, and let's think about every little detail and plan every little thing to a T. You could be 3 times as old as me, and I got more to talk about.
Yeah.
You know, and it's not just, but it's like, man, I've lived more life.
Yeah.
You know, and I never want to like tell somebody that to their face, but I've just observed it to where I'm like, yeah, I'm not envious of that path.
That's good.
You know?
That's a nice place to be.
Yeah, it really
To
is.
not be envious of that path. Yeah. Well, I don't want to rip more of your time because I know you've actually got to do a shift building bikes at midday.
Yeah.
So Kate's got her closing question.
Yeah.
Look how good Gunner's been though.
I know.
Yeah, he's chilling.
Chilling. Listening to Dad talk.
Yeah.
What advice would you give your younger self?
My younger self. Ooh, that's a good one. Probably a big one as a guy. Don't waste your time with lousy women.
Okay.
That's not the one you were gonna expect, but yeah.
Choose your soulmate wisely.
Yeah. And if it's not like, if it's not ideal, if it's not a good fit, it's like, move on. You could be spending that time or money learning a skill, learning something else. You know, at first I was thinking of that answer, and it was just like, oh, this would be funny to say. But now that I'm saying it, it's like, it is kind of true. It's like, focus more on you. Focus more on your skill. Learn how to be a man. Learn how to do shit. And that's how you're going to be able to attract those women later. That's an investment.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, you may be, and it's different for everybody. I mean, you guys seem like a great couple. Y'all probably, you met in college, right? It's like
we've for 12 years in October, something like that.
some people, they just, boom, you know. My brother
Well, you
too.
just let me get on with my shit, and I'll let you get on with your shit, and that's kind of works, you know. So.
But too, I see that with a lot of young guys, too, to where it's like, you know, it's like, well, how do I get the job so I can get the car, so I can impress the girl, so I can do this, so I can do that, and then you end up being a 30-year-old dude that can't change a tire, and you're unhappy in your relationships and stuff. It's like, no, like, go out there, like, get some skill, get some real skills.
Yeah.
Real, like, you want to code or do something like that and make some real money, no judgment at all, but like, spend some time, learn how to do some stuff, you know, be a man, and you know, don't waste your time with women who are going to waste your time, and eventually, you know, you're going to attract someone who's really great into your life. And then I guess that's one answer. Like I said, it was more to be funny at first, but
You're like, that's true.
I think one too is take the risk.
Yeah.
And if you're gonna, I think this day and age too, if you're gonna be a craftsman, if you're gonna pursue that, if you're gonna learn some skills, you're gonna have to take risks. That's just part of it. So take it and just know that it's gonna be uncomfortable. It's you might not sleep well, and you might fall on your face too. But that's just part of it. The people that don't do that, they're not gonna grow, you know. So take the risk.
Yeah.
Love it.
Like it. Take the risk. Do you know everyone has a variation of, like, everyone gives different advice, but there's a string that runs through it all. And I think people
A
that
few
listen
people
to the
have said that.
podcast
Take the
will
risk.
very quickly recognise that string.
Really?
Yeah, and it's the just go and do it, do what makes you happy, take the risk, bet on yourself. And they're all different ways of saying the same thing. And I'm not sure how to surmise the exact thing that it is you're saying yet. One day I'll be able to surmise it, I'm sure. But they all sit very closely.
Well, yeah, those are all crucial things to get to where we've gotten, to be able to do what we're doing. That it took that,
Yeah.
you know, and yeah, and that's why not many people do it. You know, it's tough.
Yeah, not a lot of people are doing it. Well, dude, I've super enjoyed
Yeah,
this.
thank
I'm
you
so
so
glad
much.
that Dave connected
yeah.
us.
Oh, me too.
I hope it's not the last time. I hope the next time we're in Austin we can hang out again.
Of course.
And do more of it. I feel like if we see you in a year, you'll probably have another 10 years worth of stories.
That'd be great.
that year.
That'd be great.
That'd be wicked.
Yeah.
But we do need to, I'd love to see the truck and we need to get you off to work.
All
so
right.
we'll wrap it up at that.
Sounds
Dude,
good.
thanks so much.
Yes, sir.